Hey, everybody. Glad to have everyone. Do we have anything that we need to talk about, Allie or Yolanda? No?
Nope, nothing here from
Nope.
me.
Nothing for me.
Great. So welcome, everybody. And so we have been talking about visioning. We've been talking about goal level systemic change. We've been talking about objective level, kind of measurable change. And what we haven't talked about yet is the fact that despite our visions, despite our freedom dreaming, we still live in a world that's that's based on someone else's vision, right? And so what we're going to talk about in class today is how we balance living in a world where someone else has developed the institutions, developed the systems, developed the vision, and still having our own freedom dreams and our own vision. So how do we adopt that abolitionist frame where we also have to live in a world, maybe temporarily, that someone else envisioned for us? So that's the subject today, but as always, we are going to start with our land, labor, and life acknowledgement. Hold on one sec. Yeah. And so can someone read the first slide?
Sure, I'm happy to. Okay, so let's start with a deep breath in through our nose. Now through our mouths. This land that we inhabit is physically situated on the original ancestral homelands of the Tongva people. We pay respect to the Tongva and all indigenous people, past, present, and future, and their continuing presence in the homeland and throughout their historical diaspora.
Thank you, Saba. Who can read the next slide? Who will read the next slide? You know, we'll wait until somebody steps up.
I'll be happy to.
Thank you.
If we take a deep breath. We pay homage to those who were stolen from Africa, placed in bondage, falsely named as chattel and forced into labor, who were called slaves but never submitted as such, who have always been fully human, with an unbroken connection to the divine and to each other. We honor our African ancestors for the still unpaid labor which built what is now the Americas.
Thank you, Heather. And who can read the last slide? Who will read the last slide? Come on now.
I certainly can.
Yes, please.
You take one more deep breath. To both our Indigenous and African forebears, we commit to the continued struggle for liberation and reparations, for it is only through freedom and justice that we truly give honor. Aho, Ashe.
Thank you. And so we did have a couple folks ask about where this acknowledgement came from. So we know that there's lots of land acknowledgements, and my university always does land acknowledgements. I felt as an African person, African descended person, African person living in the United States, I'll phrase it that way. that I felt uncomfortable only acknowledging Indigenous people, because we know that the land on which we live is built on the stolen land of Indigenous people and the stolen labor of African people. And so I'll say that Spirit worked through me to write these words. There was a question about whether or not other folks can use this. Use it away. You know, anybody who wants to use it, please use it. I didn't formally consult with Indigenous groups, but I did have conversations with the American Indian movement who appreciated it, and also had conversations with the Pechanga Band of Indians. It wasn't a formal consultation. It's one of their youth, or I don't know if she's considered a youth, 30-year-old members, younger members, is also very involved in Black Lives Matter. And she ran it by her elders to see if it was okay. And we got the go ahead, and this is what we came up with. So it wasn't we did no formal consultation, but we did have conversations. I do know that there are some Indigenous people who don't want to do a labor and life acknowledgement of African people at the same time. So I know that there's not universal agreement about doing both at the same time, but my practice says we should do it at the same time. So that's just for the folks who were asking. You're welcome to use it in any space that you're in. You're welcome to tweak it if you want to. You should also know which Indigenous group or the original inhabitants of the land on which you're positioned. So the Tongva are one of the groups, because there's also some pushback, because we know that there were Quiche Indians here in Los Angeles who feel unacknowledged, and at a certain point we'll probably figure out how to add them or do something there, but find out what land you're on and replace the Indigenous group with the land that you're on. Does that make sense to everybody? Yeah, so you're welcome to use it away. So I just got back in, like literally just got back in from Minneapolis. Many of you all know that yesterday was the 1-year anniversary of the murder of George Floyd. We had a phenomenal event in Los Angeles. Hundreds of folks joined in front of City Hall. They gathered and rallied and marched. And I don't know if any of you all were able to join, but if you were, please raise your hand if you were able to join. Tyler's across the room raising her hand. She live streamed it. So if you missed it, it is on Black Lives Matter Instagram page. You're welcome to watch. So it began as a rally. In fact, Tyler, you want to tell them what happened? Sure. Okay, I'm gonna have Tyler come tell you, because I was in Minneapolis. I'll tell you about Minneapolis. She'll tell you about LA.
Hello. So yesterday we had a really beautiful rally at the, it was across from the LAPD headquarters, and we really uplifted the work of the People's Budget. We were reminded why we were there in honor of George Floyd, and how his death did catalyze an uprising, but we have to keep staying in the streets. We have to keep demanding justice and accountability. And so we were really inspired, especially to hear the stories of the families who lost their loved ones to police violence, because as we know, there are many George Floyds in Los Angeles as well that we should really uplift their stories too. So we were in the company of some families who lost their loved ones to police as well. And we showered them with love, and we're just so moved by their strength. And that really kind of kicked us off into a march down to the Board of Supervisors, the Hall of Administration, where we gathered in front of, the Kennedy Hall of Administration and Kenneth Hahn Hall of Administration, and spoke about the work that Reimagine LA is doing to push the county to invest in our communities as well. And they have a Care First budget that they're trying to make sure invest in our schools, education, healthcare, things like that. And then we also heard from the students who were talking about the work that they are doing to defund LA school police and remove schools from from campuses, and also just make sure that cops aren't, on campuses as professionals or in another capacity. So they were talking about the Palestinian youth movement as well, and uplifting the solidarity between what's happening in Palestine and obviously the police brutality and just systemic racism that we experience here in America as well, and how it's all interlinked with the same kind of establishment. So that was really nice. And then we marched from there to Olvera Street, where we have the Black Lives Matter Los Angeles New Black City exhibit, which I definitely encourage you all to attend, and just soaked in some beautiful Black art. Aloe Black was there waiting to perform for all of us. So it was kind of a grand entrance, and we had some music, and he performed some really lovely songs. And then we were dancing, and Roger Guinevere Smith performed a piece. It was some poetry. He offered some historical insight of where we were, and also just spoke about, just did a really beautiful artistic rendition of the pain and suffering that, as Black Americans we face with police brutality so common in our communities. And then we just kind of danced it off, and folks attended the exhibit and really, got to look at the art and just take space and community. And it was a really, really amazing action that ended in Black joy. And that's a wrap.
So that was a way in which we honored the spirit of George Floyd, right? So it's really important that as we experience this 1 year anniversary, commemorate this 1 year anniversary, that we do it through our work, that it's not just hashtagging names, that we actually do work in their honor. And that's what Los Angeles was about. The Los Angeles rally and march and gathering was about. In Minneapolis, I was grateful to have been invited to Minneapolis by George Floyd's family. And so I went along with about 5 other reps from Black Lives Matter around the country. And we gathered at this big park and spoke on the stage about how families and organizers need each other, and how any effort to create divisions among us is by those who don't want to see us win, who want to make sure that they kill the movement. And so we stood with the family of Jacob Blake, who was shot in the back 7 times and who's actually my relative, my distant relative, stood with his family. We stood, of course, with the family of Oscar Grant, whom we're really, really close with, stood with the family of Andrew Joseph III, who's my family by blood. He was my cousin's son, 14 years old, killed by police in Tampa, Florida. And then there were just dozens of families there, all lifting up the name of George Floyd, and all saying that it's not enough for Derek Chauvin to go to prison, that we have to transform the world in which we live. So it was really a beautiful gathering. Some of the Floyd family wasn't present, and Ben Crump, his attorney, who absolutely gets down with activists, he wasn't present because they said Joe Biden hijacked the day and brought them all to Washington, D.C. when they had this event happening in Minneapolis. After we did this gathering in the park, we went to George Floyd Square, which, if you have an opportunity, if you're in Minneapolis, of course, I'm the #1 Prince fan. If you go to Minneapolis, you got to go to Paisley Park, but you also have to go to 38th in Chicago and see George Floyd Square, which is just an absolutely amazing gathering. And as we talk about, visioning the world in which we want to live, what I love is all down Chicago, there's houses, this is a neighborhood. And all of these houses they're not angry that people are coming into their neighborhoods. They're happy. They have art for George Floyd in their windows. There's gardens that are now sitting outside that they're saying that they're blossoming flowers and food for the people in the name of George Floyd. That intersection where he was killed has a huge metal fist at the center of it. And artistic renderings of not just George Floyd, but Dante Wright, Breonna Taylor, and many, many others who were killed by police violence. And so it is the beginnings of kind of a radical imagining actually and literally taking root. So it's a beautiful place to be, and I hope that you go. I was really blessed. I don't know if you know this, Dresden, but I was there and I saw Ashley, and I'm like, why is Ashley there? So Pro Bono ASL was in the house, as they are in every space. I don't know how you say it in sign language, but I know this, oh, like this, right? Is this right, Dresden? Yes, is that an applause? Yes. So it was great to be met with comrades by comrades who are with us in LA, and then just see them in Minneapolis because they were there for justice as well. So I'm talking too long because I was supposed to be sharing a screen a while ago. Hold on, let me do that. That was actually part of this week's victories, right? We had nationwide actions for George Floyd. We also had last week, a week ago today, we had the Student Day at End Police Associations, which was absolutely phenomenal. No, I won't say grown-ups, no non-students were allowed to speak. So, you know, we had my daughter poured libation, we had Kalila Williams speak, we had students from UCLA and Cal State speak. We had different youth groups. Mecha was there. I think there were students from the Indigenous Youth Council showed up. And it was all student led. The only groups that weren't students were the families that were there. But it was interesting because both of the families had young people with them, right? So we know that the family of Daniel Hernandez was there. So there were no young people, but Marina is a teacher, so she works with students. And then David Sullivan's family was there, and his sister is a student. So it was really, really beautiful. We released the People's Budget, which you can view at peoplesbudgetla.com. We know that the budget that was advanced by City Council is not a budget that's in line with the people. So we want you to know what the people of Los Angeles said that they want. More than 5,000 Angelenos weighing in on that survey. And we know that City Council and the mayor dismissed what Angelenos said that they want, but we have data to push back against their narrative. So even if they're wrong, they are wrong. We're gonna expose them for being wrong. And then breaking news, you were the first that I am sharing this information with. The Kenneth Ross Jr. Police Decertification Bill passed the Senate. That was a call to action for you last week and the week before, to call your state senators and get them to vote yes on SB 2. Well, all of those calls, all of those tweets, all of those emails worked. And so it's now passed the Senate. Now we got to do the exact same thing on the Assembly side, but we're confident that we're going to get this bill passed. Again, this bill is a bill that brings California in line with 46 other states, that provides a mechanism to snatch the guns and badges of police who kill and abuse our community members. It's really common sense, but we know there's a huge police lobby, especially in California, that tries to kill everything that we do. And so we're gonna make sure that we get this passed, and you're enlisted to help us get this passed. It's not on your calls to action for this week, but as soon as we get it together, we got 2 more sessions after this one, and I'll make sure that you're plugged in on how to get this passed. in the name of Kenneth Ross Jr. And then finally, my personal victory for the week is, you all know I'm a single mom of 3 kids. It's very difficult for me to travel and to do the work that I feel called to do. One of the things, and I wrote a piece several years ago about it, we all know the saying, it takes a village to raise a child. It's called womanist mothering. And the idea that we need to intentionally reject the white supremacist, capitalist, patriarchal approach to parenting that says that we're solely responsible for our own children. And my children always say they have dozens and dozens of aunties, and they do. And I enlisted the support of aunties and cousins to help me live in my purpose and have the children feel supported and protected. And so I count that this year. Let's get 3 of them before we move on to survival pending revolution. And it can be related to survival pending revolution. What victories do you all have?
I have a couple. So
Okay.
I'm sorry I missed last week. It's really hard for me to take time off and not work. But my mom came to town, and that was the first time I'd seen her since the beginning of COVID in February of last year. And I was just so grateful to be with my mom. And it was such a victory because we also went to a couple of doctor's appointments, and I was able to be her support because a lot of people, just being a, you know, like not only a brown woman, but then being Egyptian and having an Egyptian accent, she deals with a lot of issues and just racism and, you know, miscommunication sometimes with going to the doctor. And so it was really successful, and like I feel like it deepened our relationship because I just really understood her, and it was a really wonderful time. So I'm just really grateful for my mom, and she shared with me proverbs that my grandma had taught her, and just really committed to improving my Arabic. And it's just so important to maintain the culture. So I'm still basking in the light of all that.
Ashe. Yes, I can't wait to see my mom. I haven't seen my mom or touched my mom in over a year. So it is, I get emotional every time I think about it. And I'm glad that you were able to restore that relationship. That's beautiful. That's beautiful.
Thank you.
Who else wants to share? Anybody else have a victory? Yes.
I'll share. If we're talking about our mothers, I also had to miss a couple sessions. I traveled to Washington, D.C. to see my mother after 14 months. And it turns out she was in the end stage of dementia, and she died actually while I was there. And I got to be in her presence when she died. And as tragic and as overwhelming as that is, to actually physically be there and like hold her hand and hug her as she passed was, my mind is blown about like the power of that and the timing of it, to be able to do that after the shutdown. So here's to all the mothers.
Yes.
Here's to all the mothers.
Thank you for sharing that. I think everybody is, that's, you know, heavy and beautiful. And, you know, everybody who's a mom, I think that's the thing that we want, right? When you pass, when you transition, You want your children with you. How beautiful that you were able to be that for her. Be there for her. Sending you lots of love. Okay, anybody else got one? Let's do one more. Okay, Dad.
Can you hear me? Here we
Yeah.
go. Okay. Taking it to the other spectrum. I am a grandmother, and I have the privilege for the next 5 weeks of taking care of my 17-month-old granddaughter, who her mother is from Somalia. And my son, who is also a man of color, his birth parents were both Black and white. And so I have the privilege of not only teaching my granddaughter certain things, but learning from my granddaughter. I did joke ahead of time with Rabbi Heather, my dear friend, and said, who knew there were so many friggin' versions of the wheels on the bus and 5 monkeys on the bed, because my ears are now bleeding because it's at a decibel that human ears should not listen to. But to have her here with us, her name is Sherahan, and which is an Egyptian name. And it is a joy, but I'm also realizing this is why 68-year-old women are not mothers, they're grandmothers. So it is with joy that I share that victory with all of you.
Awesome. Awesome. Let's make sure that even if you don't share your victories in class, write them down for yourself, because this has been a really good exercise for me too. Like remembering that all of the work and investment and struggle that we put in bears fruit, right? And so please make sure you write these victories down at least once a week so that we can honor ourselves and the work that went into these victories, okay? Oh, the clips. I missed the clips. All right, let's talk about this, because I'm gonna wind up talking to y'all about stuff and not getting to what we're supposed to be talking about today. So people in the movement laugh at me because I always reject this notion of self-care, right? There's been a lot said over the last 8 years that Black Lives Matter has been around about self-care and the principle of self-care. And I've always rejected that term and that practice for many reasons. One, because I believe self-care often descends into selfish care. But two, when you really need people, self-care is problematic. You need community care. You need your communities to surround you. But I think that has to be balanced. I have to balance it against also this way in which Black women often martyr ourselves, right? That we believe we're not deserving of rest. And so I'm grateful for new organizations like the NAP Ministry, right? We're deserving of rest. We're deserving of healthy food. I mean, every mom that I know of, also like just basic stuff like going to the restroom becomes something that we sacrifice, right? We don't have time, so we hold it and hold it and hold it until you have to go, right? And so we have to, even if we reject this idea of self-care, caring for ourselves is still important. We cannot afford to murder ourselves. And so I think of this quote often by Audre Lorde: caring for myself is not self-indulgence, it's self-preservation. And that is an act of political warfare. Self-preservation is political warfare. Self-preservation is political warfare. Does anybody want to comment on how that is? Why is self-preservation political warfare.
I can hop in. It's actually making me think of something I think very, very related that I read around eating disorders, actually, knowing that eating disorders can affect everyone of all genders. And we see it like heightened in queer folks and women particularly. But just this reckoning that like it serves a like capitalistic, racist, individualistic, patriarchal society to have individuals like constrain themselves and to like burn themselves out and to essentially make themselves like invisible in this world. And so by preserving ourselves, if you are in a body or an identity that like the world is trying to snuff out, by preserving yourself, that is resisting this world or these systems just by your mere survival and by loving yourself in a system that doesn't love you. Yeah, and I think it's really radical on a really like fundamental, visceral level. It's really radical to take care of your physical and mental, emotional well-being.
Absolutely, absolutely. And when we call it political warfare, right? It's political warfare. It's about recognizing also that the power structures that are in place don't want us to survive. Like we have to let that sink in. This is not just about exploiting labor. This is not just about, making us feel less than. They actually are invested in our death. And so caring for ourselves, preserving ourselves, and stepping into our fullest self is political warfare. It's a show of power, right? Politics is about power. It's a show of power. You will not steal my life. You will not steal my spirit. You will not cause my death, right? I think often about Fannie Lou Hamer and the way in which they tried everything that they could to steal her life and steal her spirit, and she refused to succumb. But eventually she did, right? Eventually she did. And so we only got about 20 years of her brilliance on this earth. And so what would it mean if Fannie Lou Hamer and all of us, all of our forebears had have been able to surround her and protect her life, right? And I think about that with lots of us, how life has to be protected. That's what Audre Lorde is really saying with this quote, or I believe she's saying with this quote, is that these systems are meant to steal our lives. And as we think about the 1-year anniversary of George Floyd, right, how the state stole George Floyd's life. And we have to be very careful, because what they tried to present to us is that the prosecution and conviction of Derek Chauvin is somehow justice. But I've been able again to be in community with George Floyd's family now 2 weeks in a row. And they're clear that Derek Chauvin's conviction is some level of accountability, but it is not justice. It is not justice. This Black man, Black father, Black son, Black community member, his life was intentionally and deliberately stolen, not just by Derek Chauvin. We have to remember that there were 3 other officers who enabled it, right? We also have to remember that the Minneapolis police released an initial statement saying that he died of medical complications. So the entire system not only stole the life of George Floyd, but then conspired to pretend as if they did. And so we have to remember that the call for justice in the name of George Floyd is upending those systems and thinking about which lives can still be protected. So if George Floyd cracked the world wide open, and you've heard me speak in these terms before, his spirit has cracked the world wide open. How do we use this moment to usher in something else. And so I think it's absolutely about transforming a system of public safety, and it's also about remembering the power of the people that allowed us to even know the name of George Floyd. So I think often, almost daily, about Darnella Frazier. And she was the 17-year-old girl who refused to allow the state, to allow the city, to allow police to tell the lie that they attempted to tell about George Floyd. She's the 17-year-old girl who recorded it and made sure that recording got out there. And as I was in George Floyd Square yesterday, I saw this sign about Darnella Frazier to donate to Darnella Frazier's Peace and Healing Fund. So she has a Peace and Healing Fund. And I can barely read it, but it's tinyurl.com/Darnella Peace and Healing. tinyurl.com/Darnella Peace and Healing. And as we talk about not martyring ourselves, we have to think about Darnella's words that George Floyd's spirit has haunted her almost every day, where she apologizes to him for not having physically intervened. This is the burden this 17-year-old child is carrying with her. And she needs that burden lifted. And if we believe in community care, this child should have everything she ever wants and needs. If she does nothing else in her life for freedom, what she did was enough, and we should take care of her. So I'm asking us to wrap our arms around this little girl and think about how we uplift her, how we make sure she has what she wants and needs. And all of that is rooted in vision. All of that is rooted in radical imagining, right? All of that is part of what we do. I don't know, what are these red flags, Tyler? Do you know? Oh, okay. I couldn't see anything on the flags. I wanted to make sure they weren't problematic flags. They're not, right? No. Okay. So I asked Tyler to help me get visuals for this slide. And what I wanted to show is the contradictions between our freedom dreams and the world in which we live. So last week we had a really robust conversation around capitalism, and it seems like most of us in this space are critics of capitalism. We're not, hardcore capitalists. Some of us even admit to being socialists. I can admit that that's my belief system. I believe that people should have all of what they want and most of what they need, and that only happens when workers own the means of production. That's what I believe, right? And so what we saw in that slide on the left was a rally attended by Democratic Socialists of America. And they also clearly are socialists, Democratic Socialists of America. But all of us currently live under a capitalist system. Oh, I should have had that book cover up here. Oh, well. So I was walking through the airport this morning, right? Let me see what the title of this trash book is called. Walking through the airport this morning and went in to get some water from, one of those expensive little airport stores, and looked behind me, and there was a book called Believe in People, Believe in People. And I was like, oh, that's a good title. Then my eyes skimmed down the front of the book. Guess who the author is? Do you already know, Heather? Because I see you smiling. Charles Koch, like of the Koch brothers. His book is called Believe in People. Are you kidding me? Right? So we live in a world where we're visioning, at least for me, the end of capitalism, the end of especially an exploitative and extreme capitalism. No, I'm not reading that book. Yolanda, we're not reading that book. Don't give the Koch brothers any money. One of them's dead, so I think is he the living one? I think he's the living one. So we're visioning an end to extreme capitalism. This is what Dr. King was even visioning towards the end of his life. And one of the reasons I believe his life was stolen is because it wasn't just about racial equity. It was also about recognizing what Minister Malcolm said, that you cannot have capitalism without racism. And so Dr. King, by the end of his life, was pointing to extreme materialism and capitalism as one of the three evils of the world. In fact, he said, maybe we must move towards democratic socialism. That's a direct quote from Martin Luther King, right? They don't tell you that one. They only tell you the I have a dream, right? And so on the one hand, we can be visioning a world where everybody has all of what they need and most of what they want. When you wrote your vision statement, you didn't vision, right, in the world that you would build, people living in tents or people starving, right? We all visioned people having all of what they need and most of what they want, whether you want to call it socialism or not, right? But the truth is we live in a capitalist system where fools like Charles Koch actually have more power in certain ways. And so it's important that we remember that we have these freedom dreams, we have these radical imaginings, we have this vision, but there's contradictions in all of our lives, right? We keep pointing to the violence of the state, and we live in the state. My paycheck actually comes from literally the state, right? The state of California signs off on my check, right? We can talk about capitalism and rampant capitalism, but all of us shop at, I don't go to Walmart, but I do go to Target, right? All of us can think about how Ralph's is closing down stores in Black community, but we still grocery shop, right? All of us can talk about, and Black Lives Matter was critiqued for joining up with a Black-owned bank. But as we got into that critique, it was important to remember that nobody's money is under their mattress, right? You have to put your money somewhere. And so you got to kind of figure out who's the least evil, right? And so there's these contradictions. These contradictions were referred to in the Black Power movement and acknowledged in the Black Power movement as survival pending revolution, survival pending revolution. So when we began to partner with One United Bank, we did so in a very deliberate way, right? We partnered with One United Bank because they provided us with things I can't talk about, but they also committed to paying for funerals of people who were killed by police, of establishing college funds for the children who were left behind, of encouraging their customers to support Black Lives Matter at a time when we weren't popular. And so for us, it was the least evil, right? Survival pending revolution is the recognition that we live in a world that we didn't create and figuring out how to survive that system, right? Recognizing that we live in contradiction, also recognizing that some of the things our people need for survival are things that we have to provide. And so here's what Huey P. Newton says about this. He says, we recognized in order to bring the people to the level of consciousness where they would seize the time, it would be necessary to serve their interests in survival by developing programs which would help them to meet their daily needs. And so you can't ask people to study African scientific socialism when their stomachs are growling. And so the first free breakfast programs were actually practiced on a mass scale by the Black Panther Party. They were called the survival programs. And it was the women of the Panthers really who were leading and visioning these programs. And so they would feed children. There was after school programs. There were after school programs where they tutored children in their math homework, and it helped them to not only meet the daily survival needs of people, but also gain some standing in the community as a group that wasn't just concerned with their political interests, with their vision of the world. They weren't so dogmatic that they forgot what the people needed. So he goes on to say, these programs satisfy the deep needs of the community, but they are not solutions to our problems. They are not solutions to our problems. We're not going to get free just because the Black Panther Party has a breakfast program. That's why we call them survival programs, meaning survival pending revolution. Survival pending revolution. So in Black Lives Matter, and in freedom struggle, we have to think about what survival pending revolution means. It means two things. One, we live in a state of contradiction. There is no pure ascription to the visionings that we've birthed, right? You can't, because this is a system that we didn't create. It also means that we have to do all that we can to meet the needs of our people. Over the course of the last year, or more than a year, 14 months since the pandemic, right? We watched kind of the resurgence of survival programs through things like mutual aid, which was birthed by African people in this country as early as the 18th century. When we think about people like the founder of the AME Church, right? Creating mutual aid funds so that African people could be buried, right? Could have actual funerals, right? Making sure that Black folks who had freedom had food to eat, right? This is kind of the origins of mutual aid. And over the course of the last 14 months, we've seen a resurgence of mutual aid, which is really, really beautiful. One of the things that we recently did as Black Lives Matter is launch a survival fund, a $3 million survival fund that gave $1,000 grants to Black people, almost no questions asked, just recognizing that this global health pandemic has an economic fallout. So I'm gonna just show you this brief video.
For the shattered lives and the search for hope, for a brand new day and the right to feel seen, for the right to live, for Black joy, from protesting Black death to investing in Black life, continuing a legacy of survival, ending revolution, providing help and hope for ourselves, by ourselves, to close the gaps to equal footing, to live in our power, to fund our own survival, so we can thrive. Black Lives Matter Survival Fund. For the
So that's one of the things that we launched for survival pending revolution, survival pending revolution. You do have an assignment, because I want us to understand, and I want us to kind of take an inventory of our lives in the world that we live in and recognize spaces of contradiction. So far in this class, we've been visioning, we've been identifying systemic goals. How do we want systems to be transformed? We've identified which piece of the mosaic, which piece of stained glass we are. And I think it's really, really important that we acknowledge that we can't be perfect in an imperfect and unjust system. And so if we don't make those recognitions, we sometimes render ourselves impotent because we think that we can't realize the vision. And so what's the point, right? And I liken it to diets, right? So I always have like a grand vision at the beginning of the year or month or week of I'm not eating any more sweets. No more sweets for me. I'm going vegan. I'm gonna do just clean eating, and that shit lasts for like 2 days, right? And then you go, okay, well, I've broken it. So do I just chop it up to a loss? No, I'm not chopping it up to a loss. If I chopped it up to a loss, I would, be extremely unhealthy, right? It's okay to struggle. It's okay to say, you know what? I'm a working mother and my time doesn't allow me to always eat fresh, healthy, home cooked vegan meals. And occasionally, maybe I'll have to stop at Taco Bell and replace the meat with beans, right? I also read Taco Bell is like the healthiest fast food because there's like actual vegetables on it, right? I got to give myself permission to do that. I have to say that it's not realistic in the world that we live in for me to be able to do that. Now, if I had my vision, I would live in a community that freed up maybe some of the families in the community for them to cook fresh, healthy food for everybody in the community. And that's their contribution to the world, right? But we live in a constant state of contradiction, and we need to be able to point to those contradictions, see them, and then say, okay, this contradiction is allowable, and this one maybe is going too far. Does that make sense to you? So I want you to spend the next week looking at spaces of contradiction and how you can move beyond those contradictions, right? Some things are not okay, right? Like if you're a cop, maybe you want to get another job. Maybe that's too far, right? But, if you bank with Bank of America and don't have a One United branch by you, or there's no, what are they called? The credit union, right? There's no credit union for you to join. Maybe you need to give yourself permission sometimes, right? Maybe you have to think about how to do the least harm in a system that you didn't create as we're working towards revolution. Survival pending revolution. What does survival pending revolution look like for you? So number one, the assignment is to identify your contradictions and then figure out which ones are okay. Give yourself permission to live in those contradictions and which ones you have to fix, right? The second is asking yourself, how are you helping our people to survive? Until we get to revolution, what contributions are you making? So not just in theory, not just I went out to a protest, but what am I doing really to help my people to survive? My daughter gave me a sweatshirt the other day that says, be kind, right? And I think about that. What does that mean to be kind, right? What does it mean to make sure that, as Dot is doing, parents are overwhelmed, right? To sometimes say, you know what, I got yours for a little bit this week, right? To say, maybe your daughter is failing math because I actually can't do math beyond 5th grade math. I'm terrible at math. I need somebody else to help my child pass the summer school math class that she has to go to because she couldn't get through regular math. How are we contributing in tangible ways? Do you have a chicken in your backyard that lays too many eggs for you to eat? Who are you giving those extra eggs to? Don't just be lazy and say, I'm giving them to my next door neighbor who already has more than enough, right? How are you getting it to people who need, right? If you have Starbucks that you don't need to buy, where are you donating that $10 to, right? Tangibly, how are you helping our people survive pending revolution? So those are your two things I want you to think about over the course of the week. What contradictions do you live in? Which ones are acceptable? Which ones do you have to fix? 2, what tangibly are you doing to help our entire community survive pending revolution? The last slide that I just want to show is your calls to action for the week. And remember, your calls to action last week got SB2 out of the state Senate. So this stuff actually does work, right? Today is our End Police Association's rally. So every Wednesday, it's actually not Student Day, it's George Floyd Day this week. Oops, Every Wednesday, we are in front of 1313 West 8th Street, 1313 West 8th Street. So if you can join us today, it'll be great. There'll be lots of folks there. There's always snacks. There's always lots of good energy. If you can join us this Wednesday or any Wednesday, please come out. Tomorrow night, you all know that I host a Facebook show called This Is Not a Drill. It's Black Lives Matter. It's our virtual political education platform. We're going to have a really, really important conversation with Patrisse Cullors, who's a co-founder of Black Lives Matter. There'll be some important announcements that come and some really fun stuff that comes, some special surprises. So if you haven't plugged in, you don't want to miss this one. It's Thursday night at 7 on Black Lives Matter Los Angeles Facebook page. And then also, Tyler talked with you about New Black City, which is how do we imagine a world without police, right? We've been talking about this throughout the class. Well, the Black Lives Matter Arts and Culture team has built this exhibit at the Museum of Social Justice. It's there just through June 6th, so don't miss it. There's 2 more weeks. Please go down and give them some support. It's there every day from 10 to 5, and on weekends, there are live performances. Quick things that you can do. 1, call Paul Krikorian. I don't know how many of y'all live in his district, but Paul Krikorian is the chair of the Budget and Finance Committee for LA City Council. He, as we walked through the budget, which is a terrible budget, right? The only person who really showed any amount of courage is City Council member Mike Bonin, who introduced a motion or introduced an amendment, it's actually not a motion, to pull back a spending item which will increase LAPD by 250 officers. The $18 million that will be saved, think about that, 250 officers cost $18 million, that's crazy. What does that cost per officer? Can you do a quick I know how to divide. So he wants to pull back that $18 million and use it to invest in alternatives to policing. And so what Krikorian is attempting to do is just not calendar the item so that it never gets voted on. If you think that item should be calendared, call Paul Krikorian and tell him to calendar it, and that's his phone number there. Sign the petition to fire Chief Moore. You've seen this many times. If you've already done that, share it with 5 people and get them to sign. And then finally, we had a conversation this week with the mother of beloved little girl, 16-year-old girl, Michaela Miller, who lived outside of in the suburbs of Boston, Massachusetts, and was lynched. All signs indicate that she was lynched by a group of white young people. But the system is refusing to investigate it in the way that they should. They say that she hung herself. We don't believe it. We don't believe she hung herself because she was found standing next to a tree, not hanging from a tree. The belt that was tied around her neck was not hers or anybody in her household. And it couldn't have supported her weight. So we want this murder investigated. She was a 16-year-old Black queer girl. And we believe that that's the reason that justice hasn't been even pushed for in the case of Michaela Miller. So we want you to sign that petition. You have some things to plug into. And that's what I got for you today.
72,000.
That's not right. That's yeah. Yeah, so it's going to be more than $18 million. That's interesting because the starting salary is more than that, plus benefits. Yeah. All right. Any questions, thoughts before we close out? Yeah, I see that she said 72,000. That's not how much it costs per officer. Every officer costs over $200,000 a year. So I don't know why it's only at 18. It's going to be a savings of much more than $18 million. All right, anything else before we close? Okay, thank you, everybody. See you next week, inshallah.
Thanks so much.
Thank you.